morning. Welcome to Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and we have a power-packed 2 hours with a couple of special guests, great friends and family. And before we get started with my two special guests, just want to make a couple of statements, announcements. But first of all, I just want to say that this has been a very sad week for a lot of people that have lost loved ones in their family and in their spheres of influence. The first person that I do want to mention that I know that they had a viewing yesterday, and that was for a good friend of ours. And I say ours because he was a friend of so many, and that was Luther Keith. The homegoing services for him, I think they're scheduled to be over at Fellowship Chapel under the Dr. Reverend Wendell Anthony, who's the pastor there. And just he was a pioneer when it came down to wearing so many different hats. He was a newspaper reporter, he was a columnist, and in his latter years, he was the bad man, Luther Keith, and he performed so diligently at a lot of different jazz clubs and other venues. But the other thing that a lot of people remember him too was for he also was one that started a nonprofit called Arise Detroit. And there were so many people that were the recipient of so many great works that he did for the community. And that's the reason why so many people are paying their respects to his widow, Jackie, and his family and friends. So, we definitely want to take our hats off to our brother, and he was a mentor to so many people, and that was Luther Keith. The other person that I also want to pay, these are two people that are also personal friends of mine. He is the second vice chair of Western Wayne County NAACP, and his son was in a car accident that took his life, and that was John Hearn Jr.'s son. And the homegoing services for him are going to be held tomorrow in Inkster. And from listening and talking to John, his son was beloved by so many people. He worked at a golf course, and all the people that he worked with were just in awe of him, the person he was, the man he was. And he brought joy to so many people that he worked with. So, again, our heartfelt condolences and prayers go out to John Hearn Jr. and his family. Primarily, there's so many that John touches, in his church, as well as he pastors it, as well as the people that are touched by what he does as a chaplain with the various police agencies that he's involved with as well. And then lastly, would like to pay my deepest condolences to another good friend of mine. Her husband, Victor, transitioned a couple of weeks ago, and that is to Deborah Soleil. And just Victor and Deborah were celebrating, I believe it was 33 or 34 years of wedded bliss between the two of them. And Victor was constantly involved with whatever Deborah was doing. Victor, I think of fond memories with him because of the fact that when Kamala Harris was running for president, Livonia Pearman had asked me to come to the building where she resides at, and they had a great big affair. Brenda Lawrence, Livonia Pearman were hosting it, and boxer the Hitman, Tommy Hearns, was there, and Tommy Hearns was someone that Victor looked up to because Victor was a boxer. And so he was asking me, Darwin, do you think I can get a picture with him? I said, sure, after I get a picture with him. So, we took a picture, and then I looked and I saw through the crowd, I saw Victor, and I'm like, Victor, come on up. Tommy, this is a good friend of mine, Victor Saleh. I'd like for you to meet him. And he told Tommy that he was a former boxer as well, so they went and struck a pose. As Madonna said, they struck a pose, and they struck a pose, with their fists at each other's chins. So it was a great time that, he had, and I think he took the pictures and was showing the pictures to a lot of his grandkids and other relatives. So he made his transition a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure that he joins the many other pugilists, I think that's the right word for boxing, and he joins them up in heaven. So again, our heartfelt condolences are to the Saleh family, to his widow Deborah and his many family and friends. And Deborah, I hope that I will see you on Monday to pay my respects at Victor's homegoing service in Battle Creek. And then lastly, just wanted to make mention too that a good friend of mine, Gina Favors, had asked me to make mention about a lot of the cuts that are getting ready to be made when it comes down to federal employees. And one of the cuts is with the postal union. And they were talking about privatizing the postal delivery. So APWU, the Postal Workers Union, they're having a rally. And that's going to be held on Thursday, March the 20th, at the main post office, downtown, 1401 West 4th Street. And it's going to start at 2 o'clock. And if you'd like to get more information about the rally that they're going to hold, you can contact the president, Christopher Ulmer, and he's with the APWU as well as the AFL-CIO, and you can contact him at 313-532-8305, or you can contact my friend Regina Favors, and she's the legislative director for the same, and her number is 313-363-8744. And if you want to get involved, you definitely want to make certain that your voices are heard. So many voices are silent, trying to be silented, and we want to have these voices heard. And that's one of the things that my two special guests that I have on the show with me, their voices are not silenced. Their voices are always heard in a very respectful way in the spheres of influence that they're involved with, be it with the other union reps and also with her colleagues up in Lansing. But without further ado, we're going to talk about something that should be, and I say the word should be, very important to everyone, and that is your health and your life. There are things that we know that, people say the phrase, death and taxes. But the thing is that we know that, just as I was mentioning before about friends that have made transitions, we know that that's something that if you don't take care of your health, then you may be inevitable. And that could be making the transition. But the purpose of the show today is for us to talk about our health so that we don't make that transition too soon. And especially the grief that causes so many people if you don't take care of yourself. And that puts that onto those that may be survivors. So we're going to talk about health insurance, and we're going to talk about life insurance. And my two special guests today, and I'll let them pretty much tell a little bit about what they do and what they're doing to try and help to get people to realize how important health care and health insurance is, and how important then life insurance is, not just for the person who makes the transition, but also for those people in the family that are the survivors, that have been encumbered with, if there's any debt or any other affairs that the individual who transitioned has in his or her life. And my very, very special guest today, to my right, is Miss Joey Combs, and she is a licensed broker for life insurance. And then also, I think very little introduction for this other lady that's sitting on the stage with me, and this is State Representative Brenda Carter, who represents the powerful 53rd District in the state of Michigan. And it has been a always plum pleasing pleasure to know you both and to continue to get to know you both even better. Brenda, Joey, it is a pleasure to have you both on Truth to Power today. But I'll throw the question out to Brenda. I know that before we get started, I know you have a lot of different things that you are doing in and around the state. And I know that you have a very important event coming up on the 31st. Yes. Can you tell our viewing audience about what you've got that you're going to be doing on the 31st, please?
Yes, Darwin, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. My home city, which is Pontiac, is experiencing a crisis when it comes to housing, okay? Especially the ones who live in public housing. They were asking questions of why the landlords are not taking care of their services. Why are they being evicted? Why is the homeless population increasing because of these fraudulent evictions? And what I did, because I was going to so many different agencies trying to get the answer, whether it was HUD, Housing and Urban Development, whether it was MISHDA, whether it was the city, whether it was the county, and I was getting a lot of, finger pointing, we'll go here, there, while the people themselves were experiencing no heat, no water, bed bugs, etc. So I decided to take it to the stage and say, as a legislator, and many of us in Lansing who feel this way, and it's a lot of us that feels this way, I got them all together up under one roof. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a select group of people who are what I would call the advocates against this type of abuse, what I would call it, speak for the people and let these organizations know, because too often when we have these panels, the organizations come in and they speak what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But I want these organizations to sit back and listen to what the people are experiencing. So this is why on the 31st, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the Bowen Center, and I believe that's 52 Bagley in Pontiac, and this is open to anybody that's want to find out how they can make sure that their rental units are okay. Renters, homeowners, our property owners right now, when you get to a certain age, if your income is fixed, but inflation is still tearing you apart, many seniors are facing losing their property for property taxes. So I'm going to have Robert Wittenberg, the county treasurer, there so that he can answer the questions of how people can preserve and stay in their homes. It's all about reducing the whole housing insecurity. And this is what this is all about. It's open to everyone. If you have issues where you stay right now, if you're facing evictions, if you're facing losing your homes to property taxes, I'm bringing everybody from the federal government all the way down to local to answer your questions at a resource fair. It's a renter and homeowners resource fair. We're going to get the answers for the people, because regardless of what people may think, we are up there to serve the people. That's our only job. That is our only job, to serve the people. So there you go. Thank you. Let me speak on that.
You are so welcome. But let's talk about now. Joy, was there something that you wanted to, I want to do that. Is there anything that you have going on that you would like to speak to our viewing audience about?
No.
Okay. Well, let's get into, let's take a deep dive into our topic. First off, let's talk about healthcare, health insurance. Why is that a need that people are neglecting?
You want to start?
Cost?
Okay.
Y'all really gonna take me there. So, in the last legislative session, House Bill 6058 was introduced. I'm not sure if people are aware that during the previous administration, there was a 80-20 hard cap bill passed and signed into law by Governor Snyder. Basically, what that bill did was it forced all public sector employers in Michigan to either have a hard cap, there's a formula, it's on the website, or they could do a 20% split. And back then, that was 2011, I think, right? Publicly funded. So once your union contracts came up for negotiation, you then had to automatically go to the 80-20 split, no matter where you were. And it took away the ability for it to be bargained at the table. Employers get to choose whether they want to do the 80-20 or the hard cap.
Explain what you mean when you say the 80-20 and the hard cap.
So, for example, you could have had you could choose any public sector employer.
Yeah.
It could have been a 95-5 split. Let's say it was just for simple math, $100. The employee used to pay 5%, the employer used to pay 95%. With the law change, it meant that the employee now pays 20% and the employer pays 80%, which used to be something that was negotiated at the table.
Okay.
But with that, and with the way that healthcare has increased, especially over the last 3 years, the 20% or the hard cap, depending on the employer, is becoming, what's an easy word, ridiculous?
Ludicrous.
Yes. And I don't know what can I say? It has a lot of impact on public sector work, because people used to come to public sector because you had a pension, you had good benefits, and now it's a question because your health care is becoming so costly. And then it leads to, do people go get the things that they need to have necessarily
That's
done?
correct.
Because I don't know what every public sector employee has done, but how are their, not the copays, the deductibles looking now? Is it going to be a high deductible? Has your employer been forced into having a high deductible plan? Is that the reason why people aren't going to get services, is because of the high deductible plans? They may not have enough in their HSA to cover. It's a lot of factors that, I don't know the answers to. Maybe
Well, one thing I want you to do, because I like to educate,
Yes.
our public. But when you talk about the deductible, explain, Brenda, what does it mean when you say in the healthcare industry deductibles?
What it means basically is the amount that the insured has to pay. The insurer pays the 80. The insured pays the deductible, and it's required by law to have a deductible. What Joey's talking about, the hard cap, it reduced it to reduced the cap to 80%, which put an additional burden on a sector of people. I was with the school districts at the time. It was almost unbearable because many of the teachers were actually taking on second jobs so they could help supplement what they were doing in the classroom. Now that they have to pay that 20% deductible out of their already tax waged, it was just hard for them to deal with, okay? And I was totally against it when I was on the school board, okay, as an administrator, but yet and still I thought it was an unfair practice. And one of the things that we tried to do in the last session was repeal a lot of these egregious laws, okay? But unfortunately, things happened where we just couldn't get a lot of things across the finish line. And you're familiar with what happened, right, Joy?
Yes, and so remember, so now you're paying 20% or whatever the hard cap may be, higher deductibles, and if your employer has negotiated higher copays.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I was just saying, co-insurance,
forgot about
deductibles.
that.
Yeah, same thing
Co-insurance.
that person has to pay out of their wage. If they're in group insurance, or if they're dealing with a private insurance company, there's still that deductible that they have to pay. And if you're on, and I'm so glad you brought up inflation, because right now we're living in a day and age where many of these cuts that's coming out of Washington is directly impacting working families. So you sit back and you say, well, if I have a fixed wage, okay, and inflation is doing this, you have to get to a point where you have to decide what's important. And if you live in a low income community like I do, where you sometimes have to choose between how much health care I get and how much food I put on the table for my kids, sometimes you tend to neglect your insulin, or you tend to neglect your heart medicine to make ends meet. And this is this inflationary factor that we're talking about, that we're trying to rein in before we ended up where we are right now. And please don't let me go there. The budget that was proposed by the House of Representatives.
Well, you made a good point, Brenda, when you said that about what's going to be sacrificed, your insulin or your heart medicine, when you're trying to raise a family, when you're trying to put food on the table to feed, your family. And that sometimes can lead to a person making an early transition, because they are neglecting, but it's the sacrifices, Joey, Brenda, that people make, to do what they need to do, what they think they need to do. And sometimes it's the sacrifice of their own health to do these things.
And if you don't mind, I'll just share a private story of mine. The passion, the reason why I went in insurance, and a lot of people sit back and say, well, she went in insurance because she wants to sell insurance and she wants to be one of them. No. I went in insurance. What I hope this program is going to allow Joey and I to do is to educate people on the necessity of having insurance. My private story, I have two of them. One real quick. My mother. She died at 59 years old. She died of a preventable cancer, cervical cancer. But she did not have health insurance. Why she didn't have health insurance? I don't know how many people out there grew up in poverty. I'm not ashamed to say I grew up poor. Okay? I grew up poor. My mother had to make a decision. She had to make a decision between feeding all of us, and it was a whole bunch of us, darling, okay, or taking care of herself. And she chose to feed us. And one of the worst things that could have happened in my life is to see my mother in a casket.
Ooh,
Okay.
The front seat of the pew.
Yeah, so my goal with health insurance, which I feel everybody out there that's listening to me right now, life insurance is optional, but you shouldn't opt out. Okay? Auto insurance is optional, but you really shouldn't opt out. But health insurance is not optional. And you should have some form of health insurance, and you should also take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself now, if you put yourself on the back burner now, it will catch up with you. Whether it's at 59 with my mother or 70 with me, it's going to catch up with you. And that's what we hope to convey to everybody out there. The second point I want to make is another one about health insurance. My sister Tootie, she called me one day from Cleveland, Ohio, and she asked me, Brenda, can I use your health insurance? I was working for General Motors, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I knew it was against the law. I couldn't do it. But she was begging me, please, can I use your health insurance, because I don't have any. When I got the call from GM that they had found my sister decomposed 25 pounds of bones and maggots because she couldn't get to a hospital, she didn't have insurance.
Whoa.
I took it at that point to say, I'm going to learn everything I can about health insurance to prevent people, especially people living in poverty. Because if you have money, you can afford the blue ribbon insurances. But if you don't have money, then that's where you get caught up in a situation like my mother and my sister. So I'm going to do everything I can to educate with people like Joey, with people like Darwin, to you to listen. There are places where you can get insurance, and you need to get insurance. Health insurance is not an option. And if you are uninsured or underinsured, I'm going to give you some numbers at the end of this presentation where you could call, where you could get on the path of making sure you're insured. And Darwin, you brought up another point too. It's not about us. What if we choose, what if I choose, or my mother chose, to forgo her health to feed us? What impact do you think it made on me now? You see me almost in tears. My mother died when I was 31 years old, okay? Look at what happened, the impact of those we leave behind.
Right.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me to go into my reason why I'm doing this. There's no doubt about it, because there's a lot of people out there listening to us right now that you need to sit back and say, what kind of health insurance do I have, and what does it cover?
And that's the important part. We're going to come back to that when we come back from our break. What does it cover? Because you don't want to have somebody having a need and it doesn't cover that. You're watching Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, with my special guest today, State Rep Brenda Carter, as well as Joey Combs, and we'll be right back.
I wasn't ready. 1 minute he was here, the next one gone. What do? No life insurance, no savings, just funeral costs, unpaid bills, and fear. I can't keep living like this. Life insurance just wasn't for him to get. It was for us, for all of us, for the ones left behind. Love your family enough to plan ahead, because love lives on. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. I am a life insurance broker. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Matter. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
Clean up on aisle 5. Sounds like my life right now. Just one big mess.
What's going on?
It's my property taxes.
What?
I am behind, and I am so worried that I'm going to lose my house. I can pay some of it, but I can't pay it all at once.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Eric Sabri, the Wayne County Treasurer. The last thing I want is for anyone to lose their property to tax foreclosure. We have assistance programs to help. Visit us at treasurer.waynecounty.com, and we'll help you keep your home. We're here to help.
Very special guest, State Rep Brenda Carter, as well as Joey Combs. And Brenda, before we took the break, I know we were talking about a person having enough coverage for insurance, because you don't want to get to the hospital and the doctor or doctors diagnose you, and then they find out that you have a condition that may not be covered, or for them to do tests or to do any, of their procedures, and you're not covered. And that bill then still goes to you, or if something happens to you, then that bill goes to your loved ones. But let's talk about, making certain that a person has enough coverage. Just like we'll talk about, in the remaining time for the last hour of the show when we talk about life insurance, to make certain that people have enough coverage, because that's where people regret they didn't have to cover some of the surgical procedures. And now, if you got a surgery that is pending that you need to get, or a procedure, or some medication that you need, and you don't have the coverage for that, person that has a hip replacement, knee replacement, I mean, there's so many different things that can happen, and you don't want to bargain basement yourself. You want to make sure you get the best quality care that you can. Not getting, because it's, you don't want to get a something that could be like a aftermarket, something that could really hurt you in the long run. People have
not a
had,
car.
right, but people sometimes treat their bodies like they are
True.
expendable.
Treat the
And
car better than their body.
There you go. They
Well
sometimes
said, well
do.
said.
They may go and maintain that car to get oil changed, to get their fluids replaced, but they're not taking care of themselves to get a mammogram, to go and get any of the procedures that they need that could prevent their bodies from deteriorating. So that's the key thing that people don't really realize. You have to take care of yourself. Even though you have a lot of people that tend to do more for the, well,
Go ahead.
car
go
needs
ahead.
that,
Go ahead.
and some other things, they take care of that.
The preventative maintenance.
Exactly.
Your preventative maintenance is your yearly checkup.
And that's what a lot of people do not take as serious
They need to.
as they need to.
Right.
And that's what we want to talk about when it comes down to making certain that you have enough coverage.
Absolutely. And Darwin, let me just comment on that, because when I first went to the legislature in 2019, I was assigned 3 committees: education, because of my background on the school board, and I was family and children and seniors because I was one of the older people in the legislature. So they put me in the seniors.
Seasoned.
Yeah, seasoned. Okay, but I couldn't understand for the life of me why they put me on insurance. Okay, when I get my EOB, explanation of benefits, from Blue Cross Blue Shield, what I do is I look at each page, make sure that there's a 0 at the end of the page, and if it's all zeros, I toss it in the trash. I don't read the fine print. I don't care whatever. I went to this doctor, 0, 0, 0, trash. Well, as fate would have it, I ended up going to the hospital, okay? And when I got that bill, it was $33,000
Ooh.
for services that were not covered up under my insurance, okay? Fortunate enough for me at the time when I did go to the hospital, I had been on the insurance committee for a couple years. So I knew who to go to and what to ask for to get them to see why is this $33,000. What I'm encouraging everyone that's listening, whether they're on Medicaid or Medicare or private insurance, is to take the time to look and see what your plan covers. This is not only health insurance, this is life insurance, and it's also auto insurance. When you get one of these things from these people who are insuring you, make sure that whatever you are covering, like Medicare Part A, B, C, and D, you need to know that the Part A covers hospitals, Part B covers doctors when you're out of the hospital, Part D covers your prescription drugs. See, I know this now.
Say that again, because there's a lot of people that may not know that. When they think about the A, B, they're thinking about just letters of the alphabet. But say that again.
No.
What does that cover?
Part A covers your stay in the hospitals, okay? Part B covers your doctor's visits once you get out of the hospital. I'm a little foggy on Part C, but I do know, because of the work I'm doing with 340B, prescription drugs and drug affordability, that Part D covers your prescription drugs. Now, see, these are the things you need to know. So if you got Medicaid Part A and B, which covers your doctors and your hospitals, but you don't have C and D, then you may be looking at high drug prices here. Okay? You need to know this. You need to take some time to read whatever policy that you have to see what you are covered. If you have questions, once again, at the end of the show, I'm going to put some numbers up there where you can call people, whether it's life, health. I seriously say you defer to the subject matter expert with life insurance. But health and auto, I'm going to give you some numbers where you can call and ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask. Because if you don't know if you're covered, and you need, it's something like what happened to me. I don't know how many of you guys have $33,000 of disposable cash, but if you do have it, can you lend me some? Anyway.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
In the constituent guides that you get from your senator or your rep or the areas on the agency, do they have a short checklist that seniors can take with them into the appointments for those kind of questions?
You know what? That's something that we are currently working on
Okay.
now in my office. We're putting a checklist out for not only healthcare, auto insurance. I know they do have one for auto. Okay. But these things are readily available from your representative or your senator. So please contact them, and we'll have them sent to you. We can have them sent to you. You need to have this. Good question. Okay, you need to have this stuff readily available, and if you have questions about your medical coverage, please feel free to reach out to your representative or reach out to me. My number, can I get my number?
Sure can.
Okay, 517-373-2577. 517-373-2577. I am currently the minority vice chair of the insurance committee. So I do have the background and the resources to get you the answers that you need. But I will first go to your representative to see if I can contact you personally. If they give me that permission, I will help you with your situation.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. That's why I love you, Brenda. You are such a great representation for the people, your constituents in your district. And now you mentioned about Medicaid, Medicare. Explain the difference between the two, because I really want people to really understand this, because there are people that are on the verge of becoming, quote unquote, seniors to receive seasoned, as Joey said earlier.
I love
Well, that's what my mama told me, and she said, you don't get older, you get better. So,
You get wiser.
yes.
And that gray is a crown of wisdom.
Well, I got gray, so.
That's why you're so wise.
Probably is. Wiser before she gets to that age where we may be, Brenda.
Yeah.
But she has that wisdom at such an early age. But explain, Brenda, then, Medicare, Medicaid, so that people understand the difference. Because, and it's interesting to me because I've seen people out in the community that have the tablets, that have the phones that, people can get, for free.
Yeah.
And they may have to be insured under like Medicare or Medicaid. But explain the difference between the two so that somebody's not going up to somebody when they see them on the street corner or at the gas station or at the supermarket or something like that, that are saying free phones, free tablets, but you have to have a certain type of...
The Obama phones, they call them.
Yeah.
Well, some people, they call them that. But
Well, what's the name of the program? Lifeline?
I don't know, because anybody that comes to me and say, I've got something for you for free, I taught my son, nothing in life is free. So you're going to pay one way or the other, whether they take your name and number and they put you on a list, they could be a scammer or whatever. But Medicaid is for our low-income population that can't afford insurance, okay? It's free. The government provides this. It's a federal program going through the state, distributed through the state. It's a free program for people who cannot afford either individual insurance or they're not able to get on Medicare. And you get on Medicare two ways. You have a disability that will put you on Medicare, or you reach that wonderful age where, there you are, you're there, seasoned. I like that. Okay, so Medicare is a program that you pay into. There's a premium that you have to pay whether you have those graduated ABCDs, okay? But it provides health care as well. And the health care that you get is, once again, you need to look at your policy and see what you have covered, because it's spelled out.
the main thing is you need to read the policy.
You must, and if those policies are written for doctorate students. Okay, so don't be afraid to go to somebody and say, I don't understand what this is saying. I have diabetes. Is my policy covering my insulin? Is it covering me if I start losing my sight? Is it covering me if I start losing my teeth? Because a lot of people don't realize that dental insurance is not covered up under the traditional health plans. You have to have a supplemental like Delta Dental or some other form to cover your teeth.
Is it covered under Medicare?
It's covered up under a supplemental plan. Like right now I have Medicare, okay? But I also have Delta Dental.
Gotcha.
Okay, so what you need to know is that if whatever your current condition is right now, you need to know if it stays the same or if it gets worse, am I covered? And another thing that you shouldn't be afraid of asking, and it don't matter whether you're 70 or 50 or 20, what's my mortality, okay? Am I living a lifestyle where if I'm smoking and drinking and living in the fast lane, is it a probability that I may pass away from some type of chronic illness? Okay, believe it or not, old people are not the only one that have chronic illnesses.
Amen.
Okay, so you need to know whether or not, if something happens to you, and here's something you really need to know. Say, for instance, you have a heart attack, and let's pick a random age, 40. You have a heart attack at 40. It could totally deplete you of all your financial resources, especially if you have to go into some type of long-term care facility. So you need to make sure that you have enough coverage while you're alive, and also what we'll get into in the second part of this conversation, if you pass away, will you leave your family carrying the burden? Okay? And that's part of the financial planning that I'm doing for the National Council of Insurance Legislature, which I'm glad to bring you on board with your expertise.
Thank you.
That will work. But please, I hope you guys are listening to me, because you have an opportunity right now. You really do, whatever age you're at. But let me caution you about being seasoned in insurance. The older you get, the more expensive it's going to be. And I would love to just talk, and I hope Darwin gives us the opportunity to talk about life insurance plans out there that you can get for $9.95. I'm not calling no names, but there's people out there telling you can get life insurance for $9.95. Well, hopefully we get a chance to go into that, right, Joey?
Yes. But what did you say? The older you get?
The older you get, the more expensive insurance is. So if somebody comes to me right now and say, Brenda, I'm going to offer you a whole life, and you need to know the difference between a whole life and a term life insurance plan. Because term life, you'll pay into that for a term. And once that term is up, all that cash you put into that policy, if you're still alive, is gone. Okay? But whole life, you can do a lot with that. But the older you are, the more that policy is going to cost you. And Joey's going to get into more detail with that because she is a broker.
Yes.
Well, we're gonna get into that part the last hour of the show.
Okay. Well,
We've got so much that we still got to cover. We don't want to
okay.
give that part because we want to make certain that everybody is totally understanding, especially about the health care. Because
Yes.
we know if you don't take good care of yourself, then you'll be talking about life insurance.
Yes.
Or talk about, as you mentioned earlier, Brenda, about a person that may have had a heart attack, and all that then is incumbent upon the survivor if you do pass from that, or if there's any additional care that you need while you are recovering from that. You know, because one thing you have to look at too, if you're working and you're the sole provider in your family, and you have a heart attack, where's the income going to come from to go and pay the bills?
They don't stop.
Because those bills don't stop, Joey. As you know, they don't stop. You don't tell somebody, let's take a pause,
Oh,
because
God, man.
my husband or my wife had something that cuts our income. in half or could cut it
Eliminate.
entirely. Right.
Yes.
So what happens then to that, and a lot of times people don't have that, that luxury to say, fine, your mortgage payment, your car payment, and then you're worried about people knocking on your door. You're worried about that phone call that you get. You're worried about the repo man coming to get your car. You're worried about any noises that you hear outside your house where you like, child goes and says, Mama, there's somebody out here in a truck putting a hitch to your car. Or you got somebody coming, the bailiff coming to your house to go and evict you because you hadn't paid, but then lastly, your body breaks down, because that's the key thing. There are warning signs, as we all know.
Big time.
There are warning signs that happens to us that we just take a couple of aspirin and keep going.
Yeah. Guilty.
Whereas you need to go to the doctor, you need to go to the hospital to get a battery of tests to find out blood pressure, a number of things that could be going on with you that insurance will pay for if you have the right coverage.
If you have the right coverage. And Darren, you hit on a subject I want to go deeper into with health insurance, okay? And once again, this could strike any age group, but it primarily strikes people over 50 years old, what I call long-term care. Now, if you're not familiar with the term Medicaid spend down, I'm going to give you a 50-foot view of what Medicaid spend downs are, okay? Say, for instance, you get to a point where you can't take care of yourself anymore, okay? And you have to go into a long-term care facility. I'm sure many of you out there have either relatives or someone who is in a nursing home or an assisted living or some type of facility. Look at how many people, and I'm going to point to the African American community right now, because we seem to be plagued with type 2 diabetes. Okay? And if you don't know anything about type 2 diabetes, and contrary to popular belief, this is what I believed until I got to a certain age where I understood it. Diabetes is not sugar. It's not sweet. It's not something you add to Kool-Aid, okay? This is a serious illness that could come in and cost you your eyes, cost you your teeth, cost you your amputations. How many people have you seen walk in wheelchairs with no legs? It can cost you your life, okay? So doing preventive medicine, prevention, exercise, lose that weight, eat right. Some of the foods that we have in our community, I can only speak of mine. You go around my community, fast food, okay? Then you wonder why we have a high diabetes rate. But if you end up with diabetes and you have to be an amputee, I'm going right back to long-term care and Medicaid spend down. This you need to know, okay? If you have to go into a facility where you require assisted living or long-term care, they will spend down everything you got. Everything except your basics. Maybe they'll let you keep your house. Maybe they'll let you keep your car. But they're going to ask you to liquidate everything you got to take care of a nursing or assisted living facility that ranges $3,000 to $4,000 a month to live in. And the reason I know this is because I was caring for a person who had to go through this, and I had to watch these egregious practices that they had with Medicaid spend down. You want more information? If you have somebody living in assisted living or long-term care, once again, the number is 517-373-2577. I'll get you some information on that, because what they do is they totally devastate everything you own. And when we look at our seniors, people who have lived in their homes all their lives in the communities, we all had one of them that was on our block that was what we call Big Mama or whoever. And we see them go through such a horrific, dehumanizing practice because they can't afford to live under the circumstances. That's what it all boiled to. They couldn't afford to live in their homes because they needed the specialized care. But they couldn't afford to pay the price for that assisted living place unless they got rid of everything they owned and then that's when that spin down kicks in. So once again, this is health insurance, okay?
Wow.
And the precursor to the necessity of having life insurance, because life insurance protects the people in the event you pass away. That's why it's there.
So when we just we're going to take a break in a minute, but so when we talk about with health insurance, the important part when it comes to health insurance is making sure, as you said, Brenda, that you've got the coverage to cover the different aspects, especially if you know you are diabetic, you have a heart condition, you have issues when it comes down to your limbs, arthritis. I mean, a lot, and even cancer.
Yeah.
So there's so much that really are contingent upon you having the right proper care, but you also have to have the right proper insurance to cover that.
Absolutely, Darwin, and that's what I'm hoping once again with Joey and Darwin and anybody in the audience out there that's listening is to understand we are here to educate you on what you need to protect your life and most importantly protect your loved ones in the event that something happens to you. Now, and Darwin said it very clearly, if you know you have a chronic illness, look at your policy once again and say, okay, I'm type 2 diabetic. Does it cover my insulin? Does it cover my treatment? In the event that I have to go into long-term care, is that covered? And if it's not, do something about it.
And especially, Brenda, as you were saying, if you don't have family that could help to take care of you if something does happen to you, you may definitely want to have an assisted living in your plan that would cover you if in the event that you did need additional assistance. And that's the other thing that we tell people, and I know Joey, Brenda, your husband Randy, Brenda, that we know you have to make certain that your loved ones, check on them.
Oh my God.
Visit. Because if and it's not necessarily saying like how you have sometimes too when people do the welfare checks, Brenda, about the lady up there and they were doing a welfare check, on her and the children.
The one in the field.
But the thing is that don't wait, check on somebody to find out how they're doing. Because just like how they were talking about with the actor, Gene Hackman.
Yes.
And what was going on in his life. With his wife and even the dog.
The dog.
So the thing is that check on people. This is a time right now, especially if you know that somebody's going through something, check on your loved one. Check on your relatives to see just how they are doing, because you don't want to have something to happen and then you wish the goodness that you had done something. And we all have regrets. And the interesting part about COVID was that COVID exposed a lot of people that had pre-existing conditions.
Absolutely.
People that had diabetes, people that were overweight, people that had high blood pressure. I mean, it was so many different things that it really exposed a lot of people too. And sadly enough, even during that time, we had transitions of many loved ones then. And what we should know from then, hopefully, whatever mistakes that we made, whatever neglect that we made then, we don't do it now. That's the whole purpose of this show and other shows, are to educate people.
Yes.
Thank you.
We got to take a break. We're going to be right back. My special guest, Joey Combs, State Rep Brenda Carter. You're watching Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Mattered. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
Clean up on aisle 5. Sounds like my life right now. Just one big mess.
What's going on?
It's my property taxes.
What?
I am behind and I am so worried that I'm gonna lose my house. I can pay some of it, but I can't pay it all at once.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Eric Sabri, the Wayne County Treasurer. The last thing I want is for anyone to lose their property to tax foreclosure. We have assistance programs to help. Visit us at treasurer.waynecounty.com and we'll help you keep your home. We're here to help. Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Tune in to the I Love the Hustle show, Saturday afternoons at 12 p.m., followed by Mr. Smooth's Ballroom and Steppers Express Dance Show on WHPR 15.2 Detroit, Apple TV, Roku, and many streaming platforms. See you Saturday.
I wasn't ready. One minute he was here, the next one gone. What do? No life insurance, no savings, just funeral costs, unpaid bills, and fear. I can't keep living like this. Life insurance just wasn't for him to get. It was for us, for all of us, for the ones left behind. Love your family enough to plan ahead, because love lives on. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. I am a life insurance broker. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family.
WGPR Detroit HD2.
You're watching WHPS, Highland Park, Detroit.
And welcome back. You are watching Truth to Power with my special guests, State Representative Brenda Carter, Joey Combs. And before we went to break, we have pretty much explored a lot when it comes down to your health insurance and your health care and your health wellness. But another something that we want to talk about too is your mental health. Because as a lot of you see, there's a lot of issues that are going on with persons that may be going through something, and it's not necessarily just in their heart or with their extremities, but it's also when it comes down to their mental health. Stress can cause a lot of issues, cause you to have a heart attack, have a stroke, and stress is a lot when it comes down to your mental capacity to be able to go and handle different stresses that go on. We've had a lot of situations where people have done harm to others, but also they have done harm to themselves based on their mental health capacity. But that's the other thing too, Brenda, before we took break, and that's what we want to talk about too a little bit when it comes down to your mental and cognitive abilities and taking care of not just yourself, but also in taking care of others. We saw the situation that occurred, Brenda, Joey, about the young lady at the casino that thought the things that she was doing was right for her family when they were living in a van. and we saw the outcome of what happened with a couple of her children. And there were a lot of people that said to me before they got to all of the information that was released in the story about what happened with her. And there were some people that thought that there may have been some cognitive issues, some mental issues that may have been going on with her that caused her to do what happened, with her. But Brenda, can you kind of just elaborate a little bit more to our viewing audience the importance of mental health as well to be covered through your insurance?
Thank you, Darwin, and I'm so glad you brought mental health up, because too many of us think of mental health as something that the crazy people only get. No, you brought it very much to life. Socioeconomic conditions that you live in. If you live in a community that's traumatized by gun violence or traumatized by police brutality or housing or food insecurities, that is what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. You may think PTSD is only for veterans, and veterans do suffer from PTSD. But if you live in a traumatic situation, or as you elaborated with the young lady that happened at Greektown, that may have been her norm for taking care of her family. It may have been her survival mode, okay? But yet and still it resulted in something that was catastrophic. We cannot stress enough the need that if you're feeling anxious, or most importantly, this is one a lot of people don't want to deal with, if you're feeling depressed. What is depressed? Depressed is when you lay in the bed, when you're quiet, when you're sulking, when you feel the world is just all against you, when you get to a point where you wonder where you don't need to be here anymore, okay? This is when you need to reach out to your PCP, your personal care physician, or your pastor, or someone to talk to that can get you on the right path. And yes, once again, understanding, and I'm holding this up again, understanding what is on what your coverage is will help you. But even if you don't have coverage, and everybody should have coverage, whether it's Medicare, individual group coverage, or whether they have Medicaid, you should have some form of coverage. And if you are in a crisis, you need to reach out to someone, and then there's hotlines that you can call too if you're in a crisis. But what I'm stressing once again is the importance of taking care of your mental health, because Darwin, you pointed out all too well, you can continue to be stressed out to the point where it takes a toll on your body. Let me say that again. You can continue to keep yourself under so much stress that it starts to break down your body. Heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, all these things are precursors to living in a life that's trauma. And once again, let me just describe this, because all Michiganders don't live in areas of trauma.
Nope.
There are some that don't even have to worry about their property taxes, don't have to worry about police brutality, God bless them.
Their nervous system gets to rest.
Okay, thank you, Joy. But for those of us who do, that we need to make sure that we take those well-deserved breaks. We have to make sure that we listen. Darwin, you said it really well, because we had a friend that passed away because he slipped and hit his head.
Exactly.
Okay? But before he slipped and hit his head, we had signals that something was not right.
Right.
So that's the whole thing right there. Darwin, I don't know, Joe, if you want to elaborate on mental health or not, but everybody out there, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling depressed, talk to somebody, go to your pastor, go to your family members. If you have no one to talk to, we will provide you with numbers at the end of this show where you can talk to somebody anonymously to talk you off that cliff.
And and that's something, and I'm going to let you, Joy, address that, because that's something that can affect people all ages and affect people all economical situations and backgrounds. Whether or not if you have a whole lot of money, or you have no money.
That's correct.
It can still affect you. Joy?
As far as mental health, when you look at it from, as we're going into life insurance, that aspect, dealing with grief.
Yes.
I can remember after my dad passed, talking to a friend about going to a therapist, and they like, that's for crazy people, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's for dealing, it's dealing with grief, because one thing I always tell people around me is that one thing your parents never teach you is how to live without them. So
It's true.
you don't know what that looks like until you're going through it. And so having a therapist is definitely important, not only in depression, but when you're getting to the grief stage.
Absolutely.
Especially starting the day after the funeral, because that's when it's real. That's all I'm gonna say on mental health.
Well, and the other thing too is that it's also tough too, especially when you have, like you just brought up, Joey, you're not prepared for that.
No.
And the same thing when it comes down to a mother or a father that's not prepared to bury a loved one
No.
as well.
A child.
And that's something that happens to a lot of us.
Yes.
And I mean, we all have had, I have a brother who, when he was alive, had to bury his son,
Ooh.
and because his son was in a car accident. We can look at other people, in terms of, say, I think about our general manager here at the station, Ms. Maxine Willis, and, having to bury her son.
Ooh. Yeah, but in common.
Pastor John Hearn Jr. Now having tomorrow to bury his son, who was in a car accident. I mean, as you both said, there's the grief, Joey, like you were saying, that comes along with that.
Yes.
And that's something that could lead somebody into neglecting themselves.
Yes.
And it's sad too, and I'm just gonna say this last one, we'll get ready to get into, transition into the life insurance. A lot of times when you lose a loved one, especially like a spouse, that person that's still the widow of that person sometimes tends to neglect themselves and their health. And then sometimes it's sad that not that long after they pass. And then that's where you have their loved ones to look to see that they have life insurance to cover. Now, you may have had the life insurance, or you may have went through and going through a lot of debt trying to go and cover that spouse when they made the transition. But now here you've got the second father or mother or whatever the situation is, between the two of them. And now here you've got something else that occurs. And now here's where life insurance comes. Did you want to say something first, Brenda, before we?
Yes, I think most people who know me know that we lost two sons. I lost my only son. That's something I never expected would happen. He was a veteran, and he had post-traumatic stress disorder. And he passed away September 14th, 2019. I got the call where I was at the Congressional Black Caucus, 4 o'clock in the morning. His fiance at the time yelling, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. Where? That's what I'm thinking, 4 o'clock in the morning. She said, no, he's gone, okay? Yeah. It's the PTSD that I suffer with today is a remembrance of not correctly dealing with the grief of losing Brian. And I'll call his name Brian.
I was there at your homegoing service with all of the motorcyclists.
With all the motorcyclists. Right. But what I will say, in transitioning into life insurance, when I started dealing with the reality of trying to deal with the reality that Brian was no longer with me, I decided to look and see whether or not he had a life insurance policy. He died in 2019. This is 2025 when I'm looking to find out what I have. And unfortunately, it expired. So once again, and Joey's going to take the lead on life insurance, but the importance of not only knowing what you have, but knowing whether or not if premiums are being paid or whatever, whether or not you're going to lose that life insurance. So it was a double loss because his fiance and his children could have benefited from that money.
Yeah.
When you made the statement, she said, he's gone, he's gone. You took me back to a moment when my mom passed. I was the first one to arrive to the hospital, not knowing she had passed. And that's exactly what I called and said. to everybody in the family, she's gone, and they said exactly what you said. Gone where? Because in looking back, I think that I was just in a state of shock because I'm going to the hospital because she's in a cancer ward, not knowing that I'm the first one who's going to arrive when she passed away.
And as you can clearly see, and I hope you guys could feel what Joey and I are experiencing right now, what year did your mom pass?
She passed 2001, and I remember it clearly because Bush 43 was being inaugurated. So I literally looked up at the TV because I walked into the cancer ward, looked up at the TV. He was getting inaugurated, and I was about to walk in the room, and they stopped me, one of the nurses, because I came home from school every weekend while she was in the cancer ward. And that's exactly what I said and did, and that was exactly what my family said. That, who's going? Where's she? Like, my mama, is she gone? Where's she at? She dead. Like, I had no emotion.
And that's another thing too. When we were in D.C. and it happened, I got the call. Sherry Gay Dagnogo was there because I had to call her and tell her that I was leaving. But I went into where you were. After it sunk in, it was like I had to put a salve on me real quick to not feel the immense pain of what I was experiencing. But what I want to say to everybody out there now, 2001, 2019 is 2025. Yeah. Joey and I are still feeling the pain.
Yeah.
So what do you think, Joey, 2001, so we're talking about 24 years ago, what do you think that your mother is saying to you right now?
Interesting you should ask that. Because with my mom's passing, I'm going to go back to some things y'all touched on in healthcare. She passed January 20th. I was turning 22 the next month.
Oh, baby.
So that means the day she died, I lost my health care through her employer. It also meant I was aged out of Medicaid. So for me, that means that I have to go to the healthcare center at college now, because that's part of your cost. And then Planned Parenthood is where I went for all reproductive services, because at this point I have nothing else because my mom passed. I'm 22. I can't get anything. And so so when you see those type of fights about, well, we're not going to go there. Like, it was the only options I had because nothing else existed at that time. I was aged out of the Medicaid. I would have been aged out of the Medicaid system. Or right. I don't remember if I could get it. I don't remember if her health care covered me through the end of the month or if I got Medicaid. I just don't remember. But what do I think she's saying? When I look back in hindsight, I became an insurance broker. Well, I became an insurance agent 5 years ago. I became a broker 2 years ago. And the reason I became an agent 5 years ago is, this, as the pandemic was hitting, I was very, very, very ill. And I didn't know what was going on until the pandemic was hitting. And then remember, our state got shut down. So my only option at that point was to have holistic or natural care because we couldn't go anywhere. The hospitals were shut down.
That's right.
And as my naturopath doctor, as she began to treat me, and illness started to become wellness, because as I'm getting better and looking better, my family, it's so crazy. Some of them thought I was sick and dying because I was getting skinnier. And I'm like, no, I'm actually getting well. I just woke up I literally woke up. I remember because August 1st was a Saturday in 2020. I woke up and was like, I want to get life insurance license because I never want someone to be standing in the hospital room like I was back when the pandemic hit and they told me that I was about to die. And when I stood in that room in that moment back in March of 2020, it took me back to my mom. My mom had stage 2 breast cancer at 46.
Wow. And
I was in the 9th grade. And she passed from stage 4 when, I was 14. She passed from stage 4 when I was 21. I don't think I was a junior in college. And I remember the insurance man coming to the house to collect the money order every month. So when she passed, she had a policy through her employer, and she had a private one still. So even when she passed, I didn't like the cost of the one she had, so I got my own, which I still have to this day.
At a young age, man.
Yep. I thought about what if that was me in that room that day and I didn't have life insurance and they're telling me I'm about to die.
Good point, Joey.
So I decided, even though I have my regular daytime job, nights and weekends I dedicate to making sure families are covered because it's important. And the one thing I've learned, and the reason I went from agent to broker is as an agent, I could only sell that company's products. As a broker, I'm able to be contracted with multiple carriers to sell multiple products. So I can sell whole life, cash value, you know, term, guaranteed issue, all of it. And what I think she was teaching me was to make sure you have some coverage. Like, we didn't have to, even when my dad passed, he had it. In hindsight, when I'm thinking I'm about to die, I don't have to, nobody has to, we didn't have to worry about how to bury them. Which until somebody passes, you don't realize how important not worrying about how to have to bury somebody is. But now my mission is, because I think in our community we look at life insurance as death insurance, and we need to reframe that. It's income replacement. And when we talked about health insurance, there's living benefits. There's riders now attached to life insurance. So you have some companies, if you get diagnosed with a terminal illness, and I'm not going to give months or examples because it depends on the company, but if you get diagnosed with certain things and you have those riders, those things can kick in and provide the income.
I have a rider.
So instead of us looking at it as burial or death, we have to reframe it as income replacement. It can kick in when you know, when you do have an illness. And what if you are the sole breadwinner? It could be the thing that literally saves you. Right. And then when y'all talked about the diabetes, my mind was over here like, not only are you going through all those things with your health care, everything that is reported to your healthcare provider, the life insurance companies can pull your report.
Absolutely.
And your health and lifestyle dictate your life insurance rates. So I'm over here like, whoever you're talking about, that's going to impact their insurance rates because of that. You got a question for me?
Well,
that was really good.
Yeah.
And now the thing that I want to do is to kind of talk about the different types of life insurance that a person can acquire. We were talking about this before the show started, and we see commercials all the time.
No names.
Just
we see commercials. I mean, from Super Bowl to All-Star games to concerts to award ceremonies. I mean, the list goes on and on. But we see life insurance commercials, and we see them in a very dramatic way. I mean, I'd see commercials where the father's in a store, and the daughter comes up and says, "Dad, we got you covered," where he's concerned about his, so I mean, and then just like even the same thing when it comes down to the different types of insurance, in terms, say, with the auto insurance. TV, radio, printed media is inundated with that. Joey, what I want you to do is to kind of tell our viewing audience the different types of life insurance and to talk about the misconceptions that people have when it comes to seeing these type of commercials, as to just break it down to this, to the layperson's understanding of when you talk about units, whole life, term life. I mean, just like you're teaching a class. So teach our viewing audience what that means. So this is Joey Combs 101. Go ahead.
Life insurance.
Right. When you say units, and you're talking about the commercials you see, those companies, if you read the little fine print at the bottom, and they say no medical questions, that's usually a guaranteed issue policy. And with those type of policies, usually are the unit is usually whatever price they put per $1,000 for some companies. And what that means when they say no medical questions asked, that means that the insurance company will typically have a waiting period. Let's say, for example, I'll just use, for example, a company may say 24 months. So that means if they ask you no medical questions and they give you this coverage, and let's say your premium is $100 a month, and let's say you pass in month 20.
Yes.
that, and let's say with this particular company, because their percentages can be different, they'll give you interest on your money. So let's, for easy math, say 10%. So if you get the guaranteed issue, you die in month 20 before you make it through to 24, you've paid $2,000. Then they'll give you 10% interest. So that's 200. So you get, so that's what your family would get back. But let's say you were paid $100 a month for $10,000. They wouldn't get the $10,000. They would just get your premiums back with the interest.
Does that make sense, Darwin?
Wow. Kind of elaborate more on that, because I mean,
So they would.
I understand what you're saying, but I want the average
and it's
person.
not a bad thing, because what if there was nothing being saved?
Right.
So you'd get the 10% back. I mean, you get the monthly premium back plus a 10% interest, and the interest can vary by company. I just use 10% for easy math.
I'd like to make a comment on that, though. The companies that sell you these guaranteed policies need to articulate strongly that the insurance is per unit. Okay, because if you're going in there with the perception that your life insurance policy is going to cover your burial expenses, and your burial expenses is $7,000 to $12,000, which they project nationwide, which is the average.
Yes.
Then you come out, God forbid you die at month 20. You're coming out of there with, what did we come up with? 2,200.
Yeah.
2,200. If you subtract that from the 7,000, let's go on the low, you still have $5,000 worth of burial expenses. So once again, this is a warning to when you see these advertisements out there. Generally, just do your due diligence, go deep, and find out exactly what you're getting for your money and what you expect it to cover. I just wanted to get in that with Joey.
She's right.
So what I was saying, Joey, is kind of going to the different types of insurance that somebody could look into.
Besides guaranteed issue, you have term life, which covers a period of time, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 25, 30. I think the max I've seen is 35.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean more doesn't exist. I just haven't seen it. So normally term will be a little cheaper for a higher value, but it only covers a certain period of time. But now we also have return of premium terms.
Oh, really?
Where you pay the premium every month, and at the end of the term, as long as the person hasn't passed and someone collected the face amount, you can get the return of all your premiums.
Well,
Now that is good.
well, Tim has just came and said that we need to take a break, so let's put a pause on that, and we'll come back to that. What did you call it again?
Return.
That's a return of premium term.
Return of premium term.
Yes.
Okay, good. And we'll come back to that. You're watching Truth to Power. My special guest, State Rep Brenda Carter, Joey Combs. I'm Darwin Griffin, and we'll be right back.
I wasn't ready. 1 minute he was here, the next one gone. What do I do? No life insurance, no savings, just funeral costs, unpaid bills, and fear. I can't keep living like this. Life insurance just wasn't for him to get. It was for us, for all of us, for the ones left behind. Love your family enough to plan ahead, because love lives on. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. I am a life insurance broker. I can be reached at www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. Let me, Joey Combs, help you write your last love letter to your family.
Clean up on aisle 5. Sounds like my life right now. Just one big mess.
What's going on?
It's my property taxes.
What?
I am behind, and I am so worried that I'm going to lose my house. I can pay some of it, but I can't pay it all at once.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm Eric Sabri, the Wayne County Treasurer. The last thing I want is for anyone to lose their property to tax foreclosure. We have assistance programs to help. Visit us at treasurer.waynecounty.com. and we'll help you keep your home. We're here to help. Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Claudine Jackson thought she had it all until she was faced with the challenges of raising an autistic child. Inspired by autism is her brutally honest journey filled with heartbreak and triumph. Get your copy and find the support you deserve today by visiting www.claudinejackson.tv.
Justice for Mario Willis. Truth. Facts. Evidence. Matter. Log into justiceformariowillis.com. Read for yourself.
And we are back, and this is our last half an hour of Truth to Power. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin, and again, with my very special guests, it has been a plum pleasing pleasure to have had these two young ladies that are on the show with us, and I know that I would be remiss if I did not mention the Honorable Randy Carter, who brought his lovely wife to the studio today for an opportunity to go and provide this wisdom to our viewing audience today. And to thank Taylor for allowing her mother to come out here and go and...
I'm the mama.
Well, she has really provided a great, and you are to be commended for raising a very beautiful daughter in Taylor. So again, we want to thank you again for the great work
Thank you.
that you've done, and you're continuing to do, Joey.
So since you brought Taylor up, you want me to tell you what I did with her?
You sure can.
When she turned 19, because I was licensed by then, I had her get her own insurance policy that she pays for regardless to what I've done.
Good.
And I also had her start her own Roth IRA.
What does that mean when you say Roth IRA?
Her individual retirement account. Because when she started her job 2 months before she turned 19, she got her first checks in December. And we all know that saving is a habit just like spending. We just all better at spending. So before she got used to what was hitting her bank account, I set her up to have her life insurance because that's the youngest she was going to ever be at that point and the cheapest it would cost. So she's been paying her own life insurance for 2 years and her own Roth.
Love it.
And she doesn't miss it because she never got a chance to enjoy it.
So now let's in this last half an hour. I know, Brenda, I want to make certain that you give those numbers, that you have been promising, our viewing audience. So, but Joey, while Brenda's getting that information, I just want you to kind of go into a little bit more about the misconceptions that people have when it comes down to life insurance.
One that I hear a lot is it costs too much. I mean, you could look at that both ways, because if you wait till what you say till you
70, they really cost too much.
health and lifestyle play a part in that. So the younger you do it and the healthier you are, the better the rate would be for you. What's another misconception?
I'm looking for these numbers.
They're not going to pay out. Well, if you lied on your application, they may not.
What do you mean when you say that? What kind of lies do people tell on the application?
Oh, bunch.
Choose one. Tell the truth on
Let's
your
say
application
about
is
a
what I should
pre-existing
say.
condition.
I don't have a
It-
pre-existing condition.
Okay.
And you do. It can cause your claim to not be paid.
They call it misrepresentation.
Yes.
Give me another one that you think.
Um,
Because we can understand that. I mean, there's a lot. But one thing I want to ask you too, and I know we didn't touch upon this. Let's say for a person that may have, how does the policies lapse? I mean, besides the non-payment of the policy. I mean, because just like if a
the
person,
non-payment of the policy.
you know, is that the only way, or is there other ways? Because let's say, for example, a person gets hospitalized and they can't make the payment if they're trying to decide in terms, say, between paying their
That's an interesting
health care
Okay.
insurance or paying their life insurance, and they look at, I think I may want to take care of my living right now than worry about.
So it depends on the type of riders you have and the stipulations in the riders. Let's say you get diagnosed with something.
What is a rider?
Things that you add to the policy that quote unquote ride it, that are
Okay.
in addition to the coverage that would pay out upon you passing away.
And give some examples of what some of the riders could be. please.
So like you just said, so one is like waiver of premium. Some companies will, if you have that, the one that I'm thinking about, of course I'm not giving names, if after 6 months you were still had some type of bad illness and it was documented, they would kick in and pick up the premiums.
Okay.
So it just depends on what the insurance company does. If they'll pick up the premium, and the one that I'm thinking about, they actually go back and refund you the previous 6 months if you hit a 7th month where you were still ill and couldn't pay, but you had to continue paying.
So now, if a person, and the other part too is that I know there's different type of insurances where you could go and, let's say, for example, we talk about like FMLA, or if a person may, you know,
You talking about group insurance,
right?
So group insurance is different than when you buy life insurance from like me as a broker or privately.
Individual.
Yeah, individual. She hit it on the nail. That's different than the group insurance. Group insurance, you receive a certificate of insurance from your employer. The employer is the policy holder. You're not. So in private insurance, you own the policy, or whoever you list as the policy owner. Let me say it that way, because you're not always listed as the policy owner. But in group insurance, the employer is the policy owner. You're just a part of the group in the certificate of insurance. And there are parts of the policy that you need to read because you need to know if you're covered. And one is if you have coverage, if you're off on FMLA. Some employer policies will say that they only cover you if you're performing your normal job duties during work hours. Every employer's policy is different. You got to go read your own employer. So in that example, if you were off on FMLA and you're not performing your day-to-day job, you may not have life insurance coverage. Or, for example, I had a close family friend pass away 2 years ago. Said person worked for a school district. They've worked for school districts their whole lives. They switched to a new school district. The caveat in that school district's policy was they had to work a whole school year before the life insurance went into force. Because they passed within that year, well, they passed before they finished that complete school year, the employer's policy didn't pay.
Wow.
So you have to go in and read the policy to understand the coverage you have instead of making an assumption.
Wow.
And that's the whole part about what we're doing here, Darwin, to make sure that people understand the nuances of insurance. You can't just listen to somebody and have them tell you they have all the answers for your needs. Do your homework.
Yeah.
And then contact people who, if you have any questions about it, I'm sure someone in your community that may have some insight on this. But what Joey said is absolutely true. Just that little gap. read the fine print.
Yeah, go out to your employer's website or call your HR and request your certificate of insurance, because it's important, because you don't want to wait until you're on FMLA and then find out you don't have it. And what if you never return to work and then you're older, sicker, and then it's going to cost a lot to get private insurance?
And it usually does. But both of you, we use a lot of acronyms here, and I know what FMLA is, but explain for everybody what that is.
Family Medical Leave Act.
Yes.
So what does that entail? I mean, because I know what it means, but it's like in the case where you may have like a leave of how many weeks or months, what does that uncover?
You want to take a shot at that? I'm not sure.
It depends. See, that's the thing. Every employer's certificate is different, so you'd have to look at your employer's certificate of insurance. I haven't ran across two that look alike.
Good answer.
Because you have some employers that will cover you when you're on FMLA or disability or whatever, as long as you pick up the premium.
Right.
So it just depends on what your employer cover says.
And see, that's the same thing, just like when you talk about a person that got pregnant and how you can go and take time off after you deliver your baby. But then the thing is that, as you were saying, I know I was working for an employer that was saying that depending on how you, the birth of your child, depending on how long you could, take time off, in terms of, say, after you delivered your baby. And then at the same time, too, there's a lot of people that have, issues when it comes down to not wanting to leave that child with anybody to go back to work, and to leave that child with the daycare center, or, they don't want to leave that child with anybody other than a family member. But that's hard, that separation, as you both, are mothers, that knew in terms about what happened, in terms of once you had your child. But the other question when we're talking about, let's say, the life insurance, is that there's so many different aspects of it where the children, it may cover their school expenses. Like if a child, maybe in a private school or something like that.
You talking about cash value?
Exactly.
Okay,
Can you kind of go into detail about that cash value there?
So, cash value policies, they call them whole life, index universal life.
You say index universal
life.
Okay. What does that mean when you say that?
There's some investing in that type of policy. There's flexible. There's lots of names for cash value policies. The overall meaning of it is when you're paying a premium, you're paying for part life insurance and part a cash value account. And that's an account that we always use to hear the people say, I want to borrow my money.
Yeah, it's like a savings account.
Yeah. So what you're talking about when people borrow from it, people go in and borrow from it to pay for school or whatever. You borrow from it and you can choose to pay it back or not pay it back. It depends on the insurance company. And depending how it's structured when you get it, if you don't pay it back, they can take it off the face value of the policy. So it all depends on how it's set up, what type of policy it is. Because we can go through all types of cash values, and I could tell you a little bit how each one operates, and you'd be confused. So, but it depends on how it's set up. But the ultimate thing of a cash value policy is that you do have an option to borrow from it at some point, and it's always in the, in the illustrations and charts that they give you in the back of the policies.
Yes.
So my other question I want to ask you too is that, so when we're talking about life insurance, I've had people to tell me in terms of say that they didn't quite understand how long do you have to have the insurance before you can go and you can, let's say if something happens after month 24 and you've had the life insurance, but what happens before, let's say you transition, say in month 12 and you've only had the insurance for say 12 months, are you able then to go and get your burial?
Hold on, but if you transition The family gets the face
benefit
value of the policy.
policy.
Cash value don't matter at that point.
So it doesn't matter at that point.
But let's say you were still alive. I can't answer that because, one, it depends on if somebody put 0 in the beginning or if they front load it. So it depends on
Yes,
how
that's
much
true.
you're investing.
When you say front load.
If they're
Investing.
putting money into the policy when they get it, into the cash value policy.
Okay.
Like if you're saying, I want a policy that's this much on the insurance side and I want to put this much into the cash value side.
So
Like if you got 10,000, something you want to do. I can't answer the question. It just depends on when you're sitting down with your agent, how it's structured, and it shows you each year as you put money in, how much is available.
So, I got somebody that asked me to ask you, both the question. So how they have on a lot of the commercials, they'll say the ages, like up to age 85, that you can go and get insurance. Why do they say an age limit? Like when you see the commercials that say up to 85 years of age, why do they say the 85? I mean, are they thinking that what is it so about that age of 85 that they keep mentioning up to age 85?
I'm just going to say that's what the insurance company chose because they
Because most of them use that same.
Yeah, and then depending on the company, they may only let you take a policy out up to 70, 75, 80, 85, and then they may only cover you to 100 or 120. So it just depends on the company and what they felt best.
You know what I think what's happening there, and this is just my assumption, I don't know it to be fact, I'll look into it, is that they figure once we reach 85, there's no use to do it anyway. Everything is pretty much done by then. But I will look into that, Darwin, because that's a really, really good question. Why the hard stop at 85?
Right. I mean, and that's what most of the commercials that I see, they use that hard stop of 85. I mean, if you're 85 in a month, does that mean that you can't
purchase?
You're right, purchase any kind of life insurance, at that point. And
But if you're getting life insurance at 85, it's pretty high already.
Oh my God, at 70 is pretty high.
Yes, that's true.
so I guess my other question too is that when you look at the life insurance, so if a person, let's say hypothetically, they had stage 4 cancer, and regardless of what age, that they could be, the life insurance companies will still insure you regardless of what's the pre-existing condition may be.
I think what Joey said about guaranteed life is probably the only one will. Most, to my knowledge, most won't if they know you have that type of stage 4 cancer.
Because a lot of times they say that, when you see these commercials, know.
That's why they say no medical questions asked.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why you have the caveat of the wait period before it's fully enforced.
Interesting. So they get a chance to kind of screen to see what's going on with you during that time period. That's interesting. That's interesting.
And then some companies, not using stage 4 cancer, because I just don't remember off the top of my head, but when you look at some companies when it comes to diabetes, they may cover you, and I'm not talking about guarantee issue, but they may grade the policy. They may charge you more
That's true.
than someone who does not have diabetes.
It's all determined by what they say is the risk of insuring you.
And insurance is essentially the transfer of risk. So now that they are taking on the risk, they are creating their quotes. They're creating how much your premium is based on the risk that they're accepting.
And then I noticed the other caveat in some of those commercials is that
We love those commercials, by the way.
right, that they can't increase your policy. So once it's locked in at that whatever that rate.
Well, they're saying the rates won't increase.
Right.
Okay.
And they're saying that rate, whatever it is, that amount, and I'm not going to say the amount because the minute you say the amount, everybody knows that commercial.
I will say it. No.
No.
But they know that commercial, and then they tend to go and they kind of like just, okay. And the first thing, the caveat that they always use is that your rates cannot or will not increase, at that point. So whatever you're locked in, that's straight across the board. That's going to be what you're going to be charged until you, make that transition, that policy.
which is good because now you have a fixed cost. But even if you're healthy, and you want more insurance, you still have to go back through underwriting.
That's true.
With the same company. So health in that instance matters whether you're healthy or not.
Well, we've got a few more minutes left, and and I know time flies when you're having fun like this. But Brenda, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to ask Joey, because she's a broker in life insurance, to help me with this. But I think we should touch on, before we are done, annuities. Do you deal with annuities at all?
I literally just took my annuity training this week. It's funny that you asked that.
Well,
I couldn't sleep the other night, so I 12:30 in the morning taking annuity training.
Well, to my definition, I'm in the process of getting my life and health insurance license as well, producer's license. And what I'm understanding with annuities, the difference between whole life and the difference between whole life and term life, as Joey stated. Term life is for a period of time, and I'm glad they've come up with something that will return your premiums at the end of your term. But whole life is another thing that guarantees that your beneficiaries have a benefit should you pass away. Annuities is something that guarantees you an income, you, the person, an income while you're alive, as long as you pay the annuitization period. So it's more or less another way of having a savings account. And we maybe have to come back on segment 2 on annuities one day, so I could, by then I'll have my license.
Okay. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything, let's touch base, we can kind of double back to the health insurance, medical insurance, mental health insurance, life insurance. Is there anything else in the remaining minutes that we have that you'd like to speak on those different topics that we
on the ones we talked about, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank God. Because, but the whole thing of it is, I would like to just impress upon everybody's mind what you heard today from Joey and I about the necessity of having enough coverage to protect you, whether it's in life insurance or health insurance. And most importantly, do your homework. I mean, yes, these policies are complex, but what you don't want to do is pay into a policy and don't have the coverage that you need. So hopefully some of the things we've given you insight today on will help you. And the numbers I had a minute ago, I'm going to let Joey have her, and then I'll look what I did with the numbers. I just had them.
And for life insurance, I do frame it to clients or potential clients that it is the last love letter to your family. Because after your death, there is life with your family, and grief is real. When you pass, for your family, I'll use me as an example. When my mom and dad passed, I was living off of adrenaline until the day of the funeral.
I know the feeling.
It wasn't real until the casket closed.
Yeah.
And that's when the real journey started. The grief, the going into depression, like, why my mama? The needing to see, to go to therapy. And although my parents had enough coverage to be buried, they didn't leave enough to where we could take off time to properly grieve, which is important because your family now has a new normal. Nobody in this life was ever born, or they don't raise us to be ready to live without them. Your mama, your dad, spouse, children, nobody did that. So I just need us to reframe it as income replacement.
Yes.
As a last love letter, and to make sure that we take care of those that we leave behind, because it's real on this side. Like, if you know somebody who has somebody that just passed, cash out them some money and say lunch on me, because when you're in the state of grief, you're not thinking about eating. Send them some groceries. When people are always saying, oh, what can I do? Stop asking. Just get their address, Instacart, or send them some groceries. Send them a cash out. Check on them and say, hey, checking on you. And a part of my journey, when you asked earlier, what is my mom saying? to lose her so young, and she was like a mom to a lot of people, because she was our volunteer librarian at elementary school. Y'all trying to get me emotional. It's been a journey, but because it happened to me so young, and y'all see the post on Facebook, and it's something that people don't understand until it's them living and going through it. So my cry to everybody, or my message, is like, properly prepare now, especially while you're younger, healthier, and stop looking at it as a bill. It's a way to make sure you have an estate and you have an income for your family when you leave. And how you truly calculate how much income you need, that was in my notes. Income replacement, especially if you have a family, this is what we do when we're doing term. If you have a child that's 3, that means they have 15 more years before they're grown. And let's say you make $100,000 a year. 100,000 times 15 is really what you need in coverage.
There it is.
And that's why, with the term, because you need to make sure there's enough income to replace if you're not there.
Right.
But I wish, and for me, I did have a good village, so I got through the grief, even though I couldn't take off of school. That actually was my best semester. But once my dad passed, I was able to take a little bit of time off of work, but that's not because of the insurance. That's because I have good leave policy at work. So, but those things are important.
Okay. Yeah. Brenda, we got to wrap up, but just give those numbers real quick.
Okay, if you need information about any kind of insurance, especially health insurance, please call the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, also known as MDHHS. The number is 1-855-444-3911. You can also call the 211 helpline, and that's just dial 211. And then there's finally something that's called Thumb Care, and that number is 810-447-0594. If you have any questions about life or health insurance, please reach out to these agencies. They'll be here to help you.
I'm going to give you a number again, too, that they can reach out to you.
And, of course, if you have other insurance issues or concerns, you can call me at area code 517-373-2577.
And that is State Rep Brenda Carter, District 47.
No, State Rep Brenda Carter, District 53.
53. Okay, we're going to make sure we
Pontiac.
get representing Pontiac. Joey, give your contact information before you sign off.
My website is www.linktree.com/Joey Combs. That's if you want to join my insurance team or if you want to schedule an appointment. And my phone number is listed there.
I might join it.
Yes.
Well, we're hoping a lot of people will join.
She's a life insurer.
Yes, and we do need to have a follow-up for annuities because as people are experiencing all of these massive layoffs, they're going to need somewhere to move their money.
Excellent.
That's incredible what she just said. Absolutely true.
Well, you have been watching
you never leave your money.
Well, you have been watching a special edition, Truth to Power. We're really thankful. State Rep Brenda Carter, District 53. Joey Combs, licensed life insurance broker. I'm your host, Darwin Griffin. We definitely want to make certain that you stay well.
Yes.
But we don't want you to have to deal with a lot of the issues if someone transitions and you have to go and take on the burden of burial as well as their other expenses. Again, thank you to Watkins Broadcasting to allow us the opportunity to educate and to inform the public. Have a great rest of this afternoon.